Pizza. Hello, everyone.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Bessenger, writer-director of Bite Marks and Confessions. And this is my buddy, Vito Trabucco.
House is full.
Writer-director of Bloody Bloody Bible Camp and Never Open the Door.
If it ever comes
If it
out.
ever comes out. And welcome to the first episode of Psycho Pizza Party. Vito and I will be eating pizza and talking about horror movies and hopefully be entertaining doing it.
Hopefully our mouth's not too full while we're doing it too. This pizza today is from,
Pizza Hut.
of course, we went corporate on day one and stuff. So we're going to talk about old and new. So we can also talk about then, have you seen anything new?
Have you?
Well, the only thing I've seen new, recently we went to go to the Fender Bender premiere. So that was the last thing I've seen that was new. So let's talk about that for a second. That is made by your buddy, Mark Bessenger. And coming, by the time this comes out, it's probably already played on Chiller.
Yeah, it's already aired on Chiller TV. And we went to the premiere at the Cine Family in Los Angeles and saw they had a special premiere of it. And Mark was there. They had a Q&A. And it was fun. It's entertaining. Mark's a big fan of old school horror.
Right.
Yeah, 70s. It has a very 70s John Carpenter feel to it.
And now, by the time this comes out, it'll be too late. But The Conjuring comes out yesterday. I've not seen that yet.
Conjuring 2.
Part 2 came out. Been hearing good things, but I have not seen it yet. So I do feel like I shouldn't even be talking about it.
Yeah, I definitely want to see it. I've been hearing a lot of hype about it, a lot of buzz, which can also be a big danger sign because all the movies I've seen lately where I've heard lots of hype or there's been lots of hype and lots of buzz and I go see them, they usually are disappointing. They don't live up to the hype. I mean, take case in point, Babadook.
We were not fans of Babadook.
I had somebody get really mad at me about Babadook. I mean, they were like in my face. And I'm like, you know what? It's a nice little character thing.
It was okay, yeah.
And the villain was kind of fun, but it wasn't scary.
I agree.
I had a friend over and this guy jumps at everything. I took him to see some crappy movie horror movie in the theater. I can't even remember what it was now. And it had this movie had every cliche jump scare in the book, and he jumped at every single one. We sat and watched Babadook together, and after it was over, he didn't flinch, nothing. And after it was over, he says, well, that wasn't even scary. I'm like, well, yeah, you're right.
I said it was the best, creepiest Lifetime movie I've ever seen. Another thing here with our show is every week we're going to bring on somebody, and we're going to talk about, just randomness and or what they're up to.
Hopefully, we can use this show to, bring attention to, people who have, little indie movies that you may not know about, or books you may not know about, or, artists, anything.
So yeah, let's bring out our very first guest.
All right, so Armando, come on.
Armando! Go another piece. All right.
Hey, Vito.
Oh, you can't let you shake your hand because I'm all greased up.
I'm still not so sure that this isn't maybe a snuff film that you guys are working on, knowing your past work.
Stick around and find out.
I'm just not aware of it yet, or I'm expecting somebody to put on the porn, expecting a little solo show or something. I don't know
Don't rule anything
exactly
out.
what I'm getting into, but thanks for inviting me.
No, it's very cool you came. So we're talking about, first let's talk about, books. Your book now, Hoarder, has been out for how long now? Has it actually been on the shelf?
Only under 6 months.
Yeah, it's brand new.
Yeah.
So it's a hard copy. It's on the shelf. It's not just an ebook. You can actually physically buy a hard copy. Nowadays, with a lot of the digital age, did you find it hard to get a hard copy of this done, or is that another part of this, or?
No, I think it's a pretty easy process now. Again, there's so many different avenues and self-publishers you can use, which is how I did it. I self-published this one.
Okay.
I could have searched for publishers, and I certainly still will, for not only this, but the upcoming novels, because I will have at least one novel a year, probably from now until the time I die.
Staying busy.
It's constant promotion, but, I'm from the indie horror world and the festival circuit, so I know how to do that. That's what I've always done. I just
I mean, I've seen lots about it on Facebook.
I have to talk about the book every day somehow in social media. Again, it's waiting for those first reviews to come in, or more reviews. Luckily, Fangoria has done a review, and then
For anyone who doesn't know, what's like a brief overview of what the book is about?
it involves a hoard house and the hoarder and who keeps it, and a group of young kids get trapped within that hoard house. And it's
Hoard,
about
not
their-
whorehouse.
Yeah. And it's about their fight for survival to not only get out, but to fight an insane person, this hoarder, who wants to add them to her hoard, to her collection, whether they're alive or dead. Everything to her is a possession that once it's in her house, it doesn't leave, and that's where these kids find themselves. So that's the basic premise of this novel.
Where'd the idea come from?
I've always thought hoarding was a great background and subject matter for a horror.
Right.
And anyone who has seen the television show
Right. I was going to
about
bring that up.
hoarding
Yeah.
knows that it can be really disgusting subject matter, and hopefully I have amplified that in this novel to where I would almost call it a filth horror novel due
Yeah,
to
I
just
would-
the
yeah.
amount of horrific filth.
When I finished reading it, I really felt like I needed a shower because you really get the whole idea of like filth and dirt and mold and mildew just comes across, and it was making me feel creepy just reading it. The character, the hoarder herself, Missy, is she based on anybody, or was that like influenced by anybody on the show, or was it just 100% real creation? Or
In a way, she's my creation, but she is definitely informed by all the hoarders that are out there.
Mhm.
I definitely took a lot of the most extreme cases of hoarding and combined them into this character.
Yeah, I mean, what's really nice about it too is like we've talked about movies like The Stepfather and how he always goes down into the basement, I think
Right.
it was, and I took a film class once where the instructor was talking about how the basement represents the id and and the different levels of consciousness, and how he goes down the basement.
Right.
And I kind of got that feeling when I was reading this, because the kids break into the basement, and then they start going upward in the house, trying to find a way out. The next floor, the next floor, the next floor, and each floor gets more and more disgusting. so I felt like every time they go to the next floor, I was like, oh God, what's going to be up there? So, but yeah, it was. I really enjoyed reading it. It was a lot of fun and very disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but it comes to writers, we talked about earlier, we talked about Stephen King and Clive Barker, and certainly bring up Misery, with this. Are there any other writers outside of those two that really, that you get a lot of influence from, that as far as horror writers, that you really kind of strive to be outside of like a Stephen King novels?
Well, when it comes to the horror writers I am most influenced by, I have to go back to Stephen King and Clive Barker.
Well, okay.
They were the first ones in the mid-'80s that I picked up their books and started reading. They got me into the genre, and they continue to put out amazing work.
We talked about this earlier, and it's always a great argument as about movies being adapted from novels. Mm-hmm. So we talked about this before. I'm going to bring it up again about what constitutes a remake from a novel. We talked about The Shining. There's now It's coming out again, and these are all remakes, kind of, if you don't know the novel. But then but they're basically revisions of the novel. Let's talk about that for a second.
I have had this argument a lot with people when it comes to, and the case in point that kind of brought it up not too long ago was the recent Carrie.
Okay.
Which I considered and always called an adaptation of the novel, as opposed to a remake. But in almost all the press and reviews for the film, they said this remake of Brian De Palma's film. I never saw it that way. Mm-hmm. And I know there may have been some screenplay credit issues where they actually went back and credited the screenwriter of Brian De Palma's Carrie in the new film. But I don't necessarily want to get into that. My own view of the subject matter is any book that is filmed time and again, you're simply getting a new adaptation as opposed to a remake. And I can compare both of the Carries, and I know the new one did not get such great reviews or audience feedback, but I actually really loved the movie to the point where I can watch either one just depending on my mood. But there may be things in performance-wise that actually make me pick the new one over the original. But on a certain day, I'm going to feel in the mood for De Palma because I want split screens and I want what he brought visually to Stephen King's story. But if we go back further than Carrie, we can look at Dracula or Frankenstein. And certainly anytime we get a Dracula or Frankenstein movie, we're not looking at remakes. We're looking at new versions, new adaptations of novels which have become favorites, over the years. With Stephen King, he's been around long enough, and his earlier work, especially now, every decade it's getting redone. Whether it's Carrie or Children of the Corn.
Right.
Now we have It, and we have new Pet Sematary coming. So the further we get, eventually we may get a new version of Dreamcatcher.
I always felt that when the movie supersedes the novel, it takes on a life of its own. And I think all of those are a new adaptation of a book. But when The Shining came out, I was like, it's a remake of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, because I always put the book a little bit higher than the movie. To me personally, I know it really isn't. If you're a diehard King fan, I'm completely sacrilege right now. But I'm not as much as I am like a movie guy kind of thing. So I always held like whenever a movie hits a certain level, they are remakes. I thought, but I love the argument because it really isn't. It is a revision of the book. It is another adaptation. It really is. But it's just hard to feel that. Especially as an audience member, it's hard to feel that whenever you just like, especially something like The Shining, if I use that specifically, which went off the book completely, and the Stephen King movie was about being what the book was about. That was the whole reason they even did The Shining, his version, the Mick Garris one, because they wanted to do the book. And to me, it was so hard to get past that. To me, it was just a remake. Now, I can't see that with anything else. Like to me, it's another book. It's another adaptation of the book. Same with Carrie. I agree with you. But for some reason, the way how The Shining hit, I can't get my my mind around that about the movie before I can even compare it to the book.
I guess if the new Carrie movie, I mean, if they change some things from the book for the De Palma film, if the new Carrie movie, instead of going back to the book for its originality, if it took things from De Palma's Carrie, then I would call it a remake, because I haven't seen it. But like if during the prom scene, if the new Carrie movie started doing split screens and stuff like that, then I would say, yeah, that's a remake, because they're copying De Palma's style and there's all that kind of stuff.
Stylistically, the new Carrie did not copy De Palma's shots and his visual style, and they did go back to the book and do scenes that De Palma never did.
Gus Van Sant's Psycho was a remake of Psycho.
Yes,
okay, yes.
That's a good example.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they are, so I kind of feel
you definitely nailed it with Psycho, which again is an adaptation of a book.
Right.
But I think with what you just said,
Yeah,
that may be the most direct case of...
Right, it's like the only way that backs my theory.
I also understand Stephen King going back and redoing The Shining, where he writes a miniseries because he felt he didn't get the novel done right.
Somebody came in and wants to make Hoarder, which we're going to get into that in a moment. But let's just say, you had a Stanley Kubrick-esque director come in and take your book and completely went left field with it and changed all kinds of stuff. But the movie was still really good, but it was not what you wrote. Would you get mad about that? Would you freak out? I
might. All of my opinions on books and adaptations change when it comes to my own book. I mean, I did self-publish to keep complete control, and Hoarder is going to be a film. I'm sure of that. I want it to be one of my films.
Let's talk about movies for a second, though. So, I mean, you're a director before a writer. You've been directing for years. Is that not
Yes,
right?
but I always directed things I wrote. So I started as a screenwriter. Then, after almost a decade of just screenwriting features, I went into writing and directing short films.
Where are you from?
I did most of my short films in Seattle. I consider myself from Seattle. That's where I spent most of my adult life until I came to Los Angeles.
Okay.
And where I did my filmmaking was all up in Seattle. So I kind of consider the the films to be from there. I almost consider myself to be from there. I was there long enough, I think, to get that feeling, that vibe, that personality, which I've now brought to Los Angeles for a decade now. But I'm definitely rooted here.
Now, I can tell you, I met you at Mark's event at the New Beverly when you played Mime After Midnight. Now, this was one of your short films that was shot in Seattle?
That was shot in Seattle.
Okay, and we were saying you're looking to making that a feature as well.
Yeah, I've been working for years to get that one feature length. I have a feature screenplay. It was nominated for Best Horror Screenplay at the Shriekfest Film Festival.
Oh, nice.
So I'm confident in what the feature version would be.
I think it'd be really good. I really of the shorts of yours that I've seen, that's the one I really want to see as a feature, because I think there was enough there that was so much fun, and yet you could tell that there was more you could do with it.
I have been in development on many features, and hopefully we were going to be going into post or pre-production this summer on the first. And on that one, The Cutters, which is the title, I do have.
So The Cutters is going to be the next feature you're going to do.
Yes, that will be is definitely the one on that will come first, and it is a spin-off from Hoarder, the novel. It features a character that we meet in the Hoarder novel, but is not necessarily about. But we follow that character into a different story, and see what kind of trouble they can cause. And I can say that The Cutters I wrote for and will be starring the actress Leslie Donaldson, who horror fans will know as a 1980s Canadian scream queen who did a lot of iconic films.
Yeah, name a couple movies
I know
she's been in.
fans love. Funeral Home was her first, where she was the lead.
So The Hoarders, you're hoping then goes into pre-production end of this year?
The film version of Hoarder I want to happen as soon as I get the film version of The Cutters out. Again, The Cutters is the companion piece. I think it would be better to introduce that character and story first, and then we move on to Hoarder, which is simply a bigger project. So I want to start with something a little more easy to get through before we tackle something as special effects driven as Hoarder.
And production design driven.
Yes, definitely production design. I do have an actress in mind who has agreed on the role of my Hoarder Missy.
Oh, really?
Which, and again, until things are signed and we
don't
are filming, you never know.
But
I will say, because we have discussed it in the press, in the Fangoria article as well, Diane Delano, who, her name, her face is more recognizable, but she was in Jeepers Creepers 2, she was the tough bus driver.
Oh, yeah, right.
Who I think audiences loved.
Yeah.
She has a real personality and character. She also was in the Wicker Man remake.
Oh, okay.
She was in Sleepwalkers. She has done a number of films, modern horror films, that people really like. But she's also really behind the Hoarder story. She really gets Missy. I think she would bring my Hoarder to life, and a number of other ones. In fact, my upcoming novel, which I will be putting out this summer, Turkey Day.
Okay, it's called Turkey Day, your next one. Okay.
Is the name of the novel, but the screenplay is already written. And the follow-up book, which is a sequel, is already halfway written. That screenplay for the sequel is written. So
Jeez.
I have a whole series based on my upcoming 2 novels.
Oh, you're ready to go.
exactly.
Let's talk about then your DJing around here. Then let's plug that in real quick.
My character of Pervula from my second short film, Pervula, which I'm wearing today. This film I released in the early 2000s. It still continues to play at festivals. Most recently at Elvira's Horror Hunt, where it won the What the Fuck Award, which I'm happy about. It wasn't the grand prize, but I'm happy with What the Fuck.
I love that, yeah.
And I've taken that character. I actually played the character of Pervula, this gruesome, perverted, naughty Nosferatu character. And now when I DJ as that character. But my specialty is all music that is mixed and remixed and mashed up with horror films. So I'm kind of a horror music DJ.
Right, okay.
And
Which is excellent.
Performed at the Shriekfest Film Festival's opening night party for the past 3 years. I'll be there again this year, and I will be at the Long Beach Zombie Fest in October. DJing there. I'm going to be DJing with the group Batcave, which does nights around Los Angeles.
Okay. That's
Lots
a big
of
deal.
cool, scary nights. Whether it's filmmaking, writing novels, or even DJing, I just want to be out there spreading the horror
Yeah, you certainly do.
Spread it thick,
whichever
baby.
way I can.
Well, so we've been talking to Armando Munoz. Is that the right way to pronounce it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's good.
This is his book, Hoarder, which you can get on Amazon, and definitely recommend checking it out. So, Armando, we want to end the show by what we want to do with asking all of our guests is to. Well, I mean, we all know that like everybody loves Halloween and Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, blah 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 blah. But you know, maybe what are just tell us what 5 good horror films that you think people should see that they may not have.
Well, of course, my favorites are the classics, the ones you've mentioned. So if I am going to skip those, I may want to say the ones I'm going to recommend are films that generally have bad reputations, that people have automatically dismissed. I've noticed a lot of my favorite films are sequels and unpopular sequels.
Top 5
A
sequels.
few along those lines. First, this one's been on my mind lately a lot is Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes Part 2 from the mid-'80s or early 80s. It took a few years before they reached distribution. This has been a favorite film of mine for decades. I would put it in my top 5 of all time. It's certainly my favorite Wes Craven film, and yet it has one of the worst reputations of all time. Wes Craven disowned it, justifiably so. The distributors took it and released it before he'd finished filming. He did not feel he had a complete film, so he didn't talk about it much. But I think a lot of what made his films great stems from what he did in that movie. I'm sure I'm going to write about it in depth and detail someday, to at least let people see why I see this movie as being as great as it is.
I'd really like to read that because I'd really like to get your thoughts on it. It's one of those movies I always have a hard time getting through that film. It's
a lot of people say that.
Oh
and
my
yet
gosh!
Few films bring a smile to my face like that film does.
Okay, number 2.
This one will really make people want to revoke my horror card. But I'm going to say Return to Sleepaway Camp.
Oh, wow.
Which was the 4th Sleepaway Camp film. It was the one that had the writer-director of the original came back after he had nothing to do with parts 2 and 3, where they cast a different Angela and kind of had a different vibe. I actually enjoyed every Sleepaway Camp film, but the Return to Sleepaway Camp, I thought not only did it capture the creepy sleaziness that the original director brought, but it had an interesting story. And it was definitely about bullying, like modern bullying, and how that just tears groups of kids apart.
Number 3?
There's a Little Seen Underground horror film called Goregasm.
I've heard of it.
There are a few films by that title. This is not the Ron Bonk film from a few decades ago, but this is the newer one. It's the second part of a trilogy of The Cockface Killer. It's made by a group of filmmakers in New Orleans. They have a company called Terror Optics, and the first film was Attack of the Cockface Killer. These are definitely X-rated underground cult horror films.
And 4?
4, I'll go again. If we're gonna talk about unpopular, transgressive films. I mean, again, just narrowing it down to 5 is a little tough.
Yeah, of course.
But here's another one that will prove very unpopular for most. It's the remake of Teenage Caveman, directed by Larry Clark.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Controversial director who did
I saw
Kids.
that.
Yeah, I know Larry Clark,
and
yeah.
Bully. He does very kind of sexually explicit and transgressive films, and yet he came on board and did this horror remake in the early 2000s. It's tough to find this movie. It's available on DVD. However, that R-rated version is censored, and I highly recommend finding the original version that aired on Showtime.
Okay.
Actually is the completely uncut version.
That's
which
the
is
one I saw.
definitely
I saw it on Showtime.
Yeah,
it's definitely more
Back when it
explicit.
aired, yeah.
So it's a tough one to find, and again, it's just completely transgressive, but I think it's brilliantly done, very uncomfortable to watch.
And 5.
5, I'll be self-serving and recommend Pervula my 10-minute short film, so it's very quick and easy to watch. Again, we're going into that transgressive horror.
How can we watch it?
Yeah, I was gonna say, where can people see Pervula?
Just as of this past week, I have put it up on Vimeo. So just go onto Vimeo and type in Pervula or my name, Armando Munoz, and that 10-minute short film should come up. But now that I'm promoting and getting more gigs with DJ Pervula, I definitely want to push this film back out into the spotlight. It still seems to entertain people, which I'm happy about.
Okay, well, I think that's going to be it. We're full of pizza and full of horror talk, and I think that's enough for today. So, thanks again to Armando Munoz for coming and visiting us and eating pizza with us.
Hoarder.
Get the book. I read it. It's really good.
Great.
I really enjoyed it. I think you'll like it. So check it out. Check out Pervula, his short, on Vimeo. And we'll be back next time to talk some more and eat more pizza.